Joining us today is Werner Hoyer, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Germany. Sir, thank you so much for joining us in our Washington Bureau.
Thanks for the invitation.
I want to start out by asking you about the future of the euro. Will it continue to exist, or are we ultimately going to end up with a multi-tiered euro?
I don't believe in that latter option. I'm convinced that the euro is one of the core and key elements of the European integration process. It has been very successful so far. It has served us very, very well. We probably would not have come over the economic crisis of the last decade without the euro so well. So we should not forget what we have as an asset when we talk about the euro. The euro is in difficult situations because some of the countries of the eurozone are in difficult situations, and we must address the structural causes of their problems and then do everything we can in order to defend the euro and make this currency stormproof for the next decades. And we are resolved to do that.
Well, speaking of those addressing the structural causes, it has taken a long time in Europe to agree to bail out Greece and then Ireland. Why not act faster on Portugal? And is a bailout necessary?
Well, the Portuguese do not believe that a bailout is necessary or an action like the Irish did, that is fleeing under the umbrella. And we should take that seriously. The Portuguese have been very successful today to place their tender into the market, and they predicted that, and they were proven right. So we should not talk down economies and a currency all the time and give credit to those who seriously make efforts to go to the roots of their problems. And this is what the governments in Athens and in Lisbon and in Dublin are doing, and we should support them in this way.
I think there's concern that if the tender turns out not to be effective enough, then Portugal gets aid, then who's next? How far does this go?
I think this speculation would be completely irresponsible. Of course, we know that we have difficult situations in the different countries, and we should address these problems in a differentiated way. You have a completely different scenario in Ireland than you have in Greece or Portugal. And the respective governments are doing great activities in order to make sure that they are solving their problems. And it's going to be a long way. And we should do everything not to make their problems bigger.
There are a lot of analysts today saying that this piecemeal approach to trying to solve the euro crisis is not appropriate. And what are the options that you have thought about that Germany is considering to try to stem contagion? Debt guarantees, any kind of a macro package that would address everything at once?
We are not going to philosophize on this because that would have effects on the markets. And what is observable in the markets over the last months is that by gossip, by irresponsible uttering of unfounded opinions, you have really rocked the boat several times. And this is nothing that a government official should do. This is why I believe that we should produce more confidence and trust into the economies which we're talking about. And we are, I think, very successful in turning the attitude from the short-term liquidity questions, where we always will be helpful when these need to be solved, to the causes of the problems, and these are structural problems of different kinds in the different countries. And this is going to be the big effort for the next years. We all know that until recently, we talked about the debt problem in our countries all the time, but we never took the necessary decisions. We never drew the consequences. Now, since 2010, all of a sudden people see that when we are talking about the irresponsibility of placing the debt burden on the shoulders of our children and grandchildren, we were dead wrong, because all of a sudden the consequences of our irresponsible debt behavior hits us in real time right now. And we have the problem on our shoulder. And this is why we need to change the attitude vis-a-vis the problem of public debt. This is a different situation in a country like Germany or France or Ireland or Italy, which does not have the core currency of the world reserve system. The United States is in a different position here. The United States is in a position to afford private sector deficits plus public sector deficits plus a balance of payments deficit. This is not an option for Europe.
So from the point of view of Europe's largest economy, has Germany ruled out the question of contagion? I mean, are you seeing the European sovereign debt situation as similar to the financial crisis in the U.S. in terms of magnitude and impact?
We should not make the problem bigger than it is. It is big enough. And we are observing the markets very carefully. We are seeing the development of the structural causes in the different countries very carefully. But we should not overlook the fact that we must be a competitive partner to our world partners in the next years and decades to come. And this is why boosting productivity, boosting the quality of human capital by science, technology, education, that's at the core of our problem solution. And we should not forget that when we talk about monetary policy exclusively.
Germany's finances are obviously much stronger than those of most of its European neighbors. Are you getting pushback from other German officials, partners in the coalition government, or the public who don't want to help out the rest of Europe? And what is the worst-case scenario that the Chancellor and your government sees for this crisis that you're planning for?
Well, the German government, and by the way, the vast majority of our parliament, is resolved to stay on a very clear pro-European course. And we are going to pursue this course because we believe that it is not only our conviction, it is also our responsibility and our well-understood interest to keep this currency, to make it storm-proof for the next decades, and to continue the integration process of Europe, because what is at stake is the role of Europe in world politics and the world economy in the next decades, when the emerging markets are going to take over more and more. So we need to talk about productivity, about competitiveness, and that's at the core of the Europe 2020 strategy, which the European Council has decided about last year. And I think there we are on the perfect track.
Speaking of diplomacy and Germany's role in the world, I want to ask about Germany's seat in the UN Security Council and how that's going to affect your dealings with Iran. The P5+1, in other words, the Security Council plus Germany, recently rejected Iran's invitation to visit some nuclear sites there. I want to know why you rejected it and whether Germany feels that the military option is now inevitable.
We do not believe in a military option, and we should not philosophize on something like this when we do not believe in this option. On the other hand, we see that we have been cooperating with the P5 over the last couple of years, although we were not members of the Security Council. Now we are a non-permanent member for the next 2 years, and this is going to even further our role in this context. The reason why the six, the P5+1, have seen this Iranian offer with a lot of reserve is that the responsibility for this is with the IAEO. And we hope that...
The International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna.
Indeed. And at the same time, we see that as far as Europe is concerned, the High Representative for Foreign and Security Policy, Lady Catherine Ashton, is in the foreground. So we trust her to lead these negotiations. And we hope that the talks that have been resumed will be a little bit more productive than the last ones were. And in this context, we should concentrate on these talks.
So just to be clear, the U.S. government has always said that the military option is never off the table. Would Germany not back the U.S. in the case if the U.S. felt that that was the only way left to prevent an Iran nuclear bomb?
It would be completely irresponsible to produce any headline in this context.
Deputy Minister Hoyer, thank you so much for joining us today.